Hello, I'm Yanis Varoufakis. You may know me as the former finance minister of Greece. But I'm not here to talk to you about Greece. I'm here to talk about our common home, Europe. Europe, unfortunately, tragically, is disintegrating in every realm, in terms of our Eurozone, in terms of our common or lack of common attitude to refugees that are landing on our shores. We have fences and electrified walls springing up everywhere. We have the British thinking of leaving. We have divisions between the north and the south, the east and the west. None of this is an accident. It all has to do with the faulty construction of the European Union institutions. They are characterized by a vacuum of democracy. Have you asked yourselves, why is it that Europe is the only economic bloc in the world that has not managed to recover from the 2008 crisis? Let me tell you why that is. Because those who make decisions are not subject to your scrutiny. You cannot fire Mr. Thomas Wieser, the head of the Euro Working Group that is determining the policies that affect you, or Austria, or Germany for that matter, Greece and so on and so forth. The disintegration of the European Union will no doubt continue until we find ourselves in a postmodern version of the 1930s. The only thing that can stop that is the democratization of the European Union, a surge of democracy. We need to do that which the generation of the 1930s here in Spain and in the rest of Europe failed to do. To create a broad coalition of Democrats, whether they are left-wing, right-wing, Marxist, radicals, liberals, it doesn't matter. A broad coalition of European Democrats that will stop this disintegration, this slide into a version of the 1930s that our children are going to take us to task for having allowed to take place. In Berlin on the 9th of February, we started the Democracy in Europe movement, DiEM, we call it. I'm calling upon you to join this broad infrastructure of democratic action and thinking in order to do exactly which we must do, to democratize Europe. Thank you.
Yanis Varoufakis is a scholar, writer, philosopher of clarity, insight, generosity, and engaging prose, not to mention integrity and courage.
Outstanding economist and political analyst.
Yanis Varoufakis is one of my few heroes. His achievements are, I think, incredibly important.
The Thucydides of our time on Europe's economy and its common currency.
His remarkable talents are fully in display in his recent study of Europe's crisis.
The European project and the European Central Bank project and the creation of the euro had a democratic deficit, really from the origin and almost from the design.
In recent months, we've seen Brexit. We've seen the election of Donald Trump. We see the referendum in Italy and the rapidly upcoming election in France. We see the pillar of European political stability, Germany, shaking like a leaf in the wind. Can anyone doubt that the wolf is at the door?
You see, the choice is not inside or out. Because even if you simply step out of the European system, you don't disturb its game. You just marginalize yourself, and then where do you go? To China, which will exploit you even more, to Russia or what? Yanis tried to do the right thing, to remain within European Union and disturb the game from within. That's why he was such a threat.
It is one of those moments when, as Lincoln said in 1862, we cannot escape history.
It's a book which is set to provoke our rage, to make us think. And that's what we need.
Even we here hold the power and bear the responsibility.
Don't be broken. It's not the end of the game. As long as people as Yanis are around, alive and kicking, there still is hope.
Western democracies need a New Deal. Having dismissed their poverty as a personality defect and their zero-hour contracts as efficiency gains, the deep establishment is looking on in despair as a nationalist international triumphs. Two are its handmaidens: involuntary underemployment, the bitter price of austerity, and involuntary migration, the bitter fruit of concentrating decent jobs in small areas. People do not move to London because of the theatre scene or to Britain because of the weather. They move because they must. Neither globalization nor electrified border fences can fix this. It is delusional to believe that Britain or America can prosper sustainably when neighboring nations are in crisis. The cure is decent jobs with a right to a living wage, healthcare, education and social housing in people's own communities. This is why we need a new deal on both sides of the Atlantic, a new Bretton Woods that conceives of investment in people's communities in the same way that the Green Movement conceives of climate change, a joint responsibility of a species whose interests are intertwined. We also need to establish a right to universal basic income. Fear of machines that can liberate us from drudgery is a sign of a timid and divided society. The Luddites are amongst the most misunderstood historical agents. Their vandalism of machinery was not a protest against automation. It was against social arrangements that deprived them of life prospects in the face of technological innovation. Our societies must embrace the rise of the machines, but ensure that they contribute to shared prosperity. Every citizen must be granted property rights over part of the wealth that the machines produce. We need to establish a universal basic income to be funded from the returns of capital, not tax. It's what I call a universal basic dividend. This will allow us to spread the returns from automation to the whole of society. In June 2015, something quite remarkable happened in Europe. The European Central Bank closed down Greece's commercial banks during a terse negotiation between Greece and its creditors. The European Central Bank at the time and its president Mario Draghi claimed that they were doing their job impartially. They were not participating in the political process of asphyxiating the Greek government, and that they were acting legally within the rule book of the European Central Bank. But is that the case? Clearly, the president of the European Central Bank, Mr. Draghi, was not sure about that. He was not sure about the legality of his actions. We know that because apparently he commissioned a legal opinion from an independent private law firm to find out if what he was doing was legal. Now, shouldn't we be able, as European citizens, to read that legal opinion? Fabio De Masi, a member of European Parliament representing Die Linke and the European Party of the Left, filed an application to have this, a copy of this legal opinion. Mr. Draghi wrote back saying that he can't share the legal opinion that he commissioned because of reasons of confidentiality and needing to protect the private law firm that had delivered the report. Now, since then, Fabio and I contacted a law professor, a professor of public, European and international law from the University of Bremen, an authority in his field, who gave us his own legal opinion that Mr. Draghi has no leg to stand on in refusing access to the legal opinion that he paid for using European citizens' monies. DiEM25, the Democracy in Europe movement, is today beginning a campaign for collecting signatures to add to a list, an array of signatories, demanding from the European Central Bank and Mr. Mario Draghi that he releases, on the basis of a mass freedom of information action, this legal opinion for all to see. Signatories of the DiEM25 petition are Benoît Hamon, the Socialist Party's presidential candidate in the forthcoming presidential election in France, Katja Kipping, the co-president, co-chair of Die Linke in Germany, Gesine Schwan, twice the SPD's candidate for the presidency of the Federal Republic of Germany, Fabio De Masi, and myself. Plus a long list of distinguished academics from Germany, from France, from the United Kingdom, from the United States. We want your support. We want you to join the petition that DiEM25 is commencing immediately, in order to force transparency to become a matter of fact in Frankfurt. Remember, the European Central Bank has immense power. It has the power to close down your banks in Europe at the drop of a hat. If that power is used without transparency and arbitrarily, there is no democracy in Europe. Join us.